Welcome to the Practice Accelerator Podcast, powered by Blue Camel. This podcast is all about the business of dentistry. We talk to dentists from all over to hear stories of what works. The ups and downs provide you guidance for your own practice journey. Whether you're an associate thinking of starting a practice, own one practice, or many, our goal is to help you succeed in the business of dentistry.
Welcome, everyone. We are super excited to have Timothy A. Brown, CEO of ROI Corp, today as a guest on the Practice Accelerator Podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Timothy.
Pleasure to be here, Arvin. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So just a quick introduction on behalf of Timothy. Timothy is Canada's leading healthcare practice appraiser and business broker. He works with business owners to reveal the fair market value of their business and helps them to sell their business with dignity and profitability. He's pioneered numerous trademarks in Canada, including Locum Lifestyle, iDentist, and Investor Dentist. He's publisher of Profitable Practice magazine and author of 2 books. The latest, The Profitable Practice. Lots to talk about today, and I'm super excited for our audience to get access to you and get your perspective. And so let's jump right in. What is a business broker? Why would a dentist need one? And could a dentist perhaps buy or sell a practice without one?
I think, one of the things that I often want to talk about, and it was in my byline there, is that a dentist, when he or she is ready to sell their practice for any reason, and there's a multitude of reasons that people sell practices, is they deserve to do so with dignity and profitably. When you negotiate for yourself, you're self-representing, we call it in real estate, residential real estate, they call it FSBO, which stands for sale by owner. Some people like to do that. They're intrigued by the challenge of it. When you negotiate for yourself, you can accidentally become somewhat empathetic towards the purchaser. Somebody approaches you, they say they want to make a purchase, you like them, you maybe see some of yourself in them as you did when you were a young man or woman. They kind of pour some praise upon you that, I'd like to, you have a wonderful business. I'd like to know all the things you know. Your reputation is phenomenal. I'd love you to guide me through the early stages of my ownership career. And the owner at that time can become quite disarmed. And it's just showing empathy for a young person who's about to borrow a lot of money to buy your practice. And where the broker comes in is to insulate you from that. We are the intermediary. We keep everybody at arm's length. I wouldn't say sterilize the process, but we certainly take out some of the risk of becoming intimate or empathetic towards a purchaser. Empathy will reduce sale price from the eyes and the mind of a buyer in the large majority of instances. So, by example, I'm an investor in real estate. I buy residential rental real estate and a little bit of commercial. I never buy the property direct from the owner. Whenever there's a property for sale, if it's listed with an agent, I go direct to that agent. I don't use a buyer broker. I go direct to the agent and say, I'm interested in this property, which is fine. When I sell a property, I don't sell my own property. I go to a realtor and ask them to sell it for me. Part of the reason for that is I just want to be removed from knowing the purchaser and his or her situation. Quite often, purchasers are younger in the case of a professional practice, and you feel for them. So the dignity part of it is we'll respect your integrity, your pride, your sweat equity, and the value of your business so that you can always remain confident that your business is being represented and sold for what it's truly worth. It's real economic value, not its negotiated value and not the empathy value that someone will try to extract from you. And I think that a buyer or an owner today is naive to think that today's buyers aren't clever. And they also have very clever and assertive advisors. And my accountant and my lawyer and my partner and my consultant and my classmate and my professor and my banker all want me to get a deal. That's what they do for us. Not necessarily at the expense of humiliating someone else, but at the expense of negotiating against them. So if you try and do it yourself, there's a very, very high probability you will be negotiated down by the purchaser because of all the elements of one dentist in a senior position looking down towards a dentist in a junior position and feeling empathetic. And you might lose a little bit of dignity in the process, and you'll definitely forfeit some profit. And that's a very, very long description to say what brokers actually do. I hope that helps the audio.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it seems like unless I know it's maybe a family connection or a friend connection, and I'm choosing to give them a deal on it, it's almost like you'd always want to use a broker to get the true economic value of your practice. That's very interesting. I've never heard it worded that way. I think that's a strong consideration for folks looking to buy and sell a practice. Similarly to residential folks, sometimes realtors get a bad rap. Like, what do? All they do is maybe listed on MLS or what have you. But it seems like all the due diligence and, as you say, not necessarily sterilizing the process, but allowing the true economic value and the dignity of all that equity to be valued into the negotiation is critical. That's super interesting.
Arvin, I just want to expand. Sorry to interrupt you, Arvin. I want to expand for a minute. There's an old saying in the real estate industry, and it is intended to promote the use of a broker. So this is a marketing slogan, but it's also a very real thing. You as a seller, you can pay the commission to the buyer or you can pay it to the broker. Either way, there's a very, very high probability you will be paying a reduction in sale price, either 5 or 10% to the broker, 5% in residential real estate. Business brokers like me, we charge 10, or the buyer will extract it from you. I approached a seller direct on one occasion. There was no realtor involved, not on my side nor on his side. And I said to the owner, we need to determine the value first. Let's get it appraised. You get one, I get one. We both did. We independently and separately ordered 2 appraisals. And then we compared. They weren't that far apart, okay? So we were both impressed that we picked good people and they were not far apart at all. Nothing meaningful for the process itself. Then I approached him and said, look, here's the 2 appraisals. Here's the medium. But because you're not paying a realtor or a broker, and I'm not, could we at least cut the price by, say, 5%? He went, sure, I'll split it with you. So he already immediately gave me half of the commission for just asking, because he was going to pay it anyways had he gone to a broker. So like we say, it is a marketing slogan, and I don't want anyone to think it's anything different, but it does ring true. You can pay the commission to the buyer or you can pay it to the broker. If you do everything yourself, DIY or FSBO, for sale by owner, you will just do more. You will invest more time. Your accounting and legal fees will probably go up because you're not getting some of that experience that a broker would have. And you will probably be negotiated down because purchasers today are very effective, very well informed. It's a very intelligent purchaser pool that you're dealing with today. And they have a very wide circle of advisors who are advocating for them and only for them. And when you're older and you're maybe a little fatigued, you're tired, your negotiating skills probably aren't the sharpest either. I hope that expands on the first question, and maybe we could move along to the next now, Arvin. Thank you.
No, that's great. No, appreciate that. So what are the benefits of a reputable broker? Like the folks listening on this podcast are both in the US and Canada. There may be some nuances there, but from a principles, or if you had a checklist of a dentist looking for a reputable broker, what would they be looking for?
So because we work here at ROI Corporation in Canada, we exclusively work and represent for the owner. We only advocate for owners. So up here, we don't do dual agency. We don't do what we call a BRA, BRA, which is a buyer representation agreement. We only work for owners. So my answer is going to be designed purely for the owners on the podcast. For buyers, there's another answer altogether. For an owner, what do you want to look for when you're looking to engage a professional healthcare or a dental practice appraiser and broker? Obviously, I'm going to say experience because our company was founded by my father in 1974, and cumulatively, we have more experience than anybody just because we were the first into the market. So, first to market just accumulates more hours and experience than anybody. So that's something that has to be considered. And all I ever say about experience is it better count for something. I don't know what it means, but it better matter for something. And for an experienced dentist who has 30, 40 or more years in dental practice, I know they know and they value their experience, and they know they're probably a little more competent than a new graduate or a rookie or a deep discount dentist in the area. So I think that the majority of sellers feel proud and feel experienced, and I think they naturally gravitate towards those that have a similar track record. So our company has that in the case of Canada, and there's certainly a number of companies in the United States. I won't list them off, but I do communicate with some of the top producers in the States because I like to hang around with winners. And there's some really good choices out there. one of the things that's happening in all industries, including dentistry and mine, is the commoditization of the service. Amazon, Walmart started killing all the small town realtors. Amazon's killing the big realtors now. Here in Canada, Arvin, I'm sure you're watching the retailers fall. It's June of 2020, and retailers are starting to fall like dominoes. So that's because of price and convenience. So in business brokerage, there's price and convenience offers. The convenience part of what we do, we're really not a very convenient service. Business brokerage is very private. It's very secretive. It has to be done after hours. There's hundreds and hundreds of questions and documents that need to be gathered to get the business ready for sale. So it's not a convenient service. And other than maybe sending you forms electronically, I really don't know how to make my business more convenient. So for the owner of a dental practice, you can't really compare one broker against the other on the convenience. Remember, we're talking the model of price and convenience as, say, Amazon and Walmart has done it. So then it comes down to price. And there are brokers who charge substantially less than our firm. So that's a very easy comparison. Tim, your commission is 10%. The other guy charges, and I've heard it all, every number you can imagine, down to zero almost. And they say, these people are charging a lot less than you. And my answer to that is, I should hope so. Or there's something wrong with our experience and our service proposition. So when you're picking a broker, the art of the business and the science of the business can only be learned and gained through experience. And I'm not trying to dismiss anyone else in the industry, but I remember when I was a rookie in this business, when I started with my dad as a teenager, I didn't really know what I was doing at first. And my dad was the guy that I was learning from. It took me many, many years to build a competency in this because it's a very complex service that we offer. Residential real estate is substantially more simplistic. There's lots of elements to residential real estate, but it's significantly more simplistic than business brokerage. So look for experience and look for competency. And most business owners are smart enough to make their interviews and check their references. And you can make your own decision, but just don't go for the lowest price, because we all know what happens when we do that. And we've all made that mistake, Arvin. We've bought something low cost, low price, made in another nation, and it didn't work out. So that's my end on that.
Yeah, no, that I appreciate that. I think that's similar to what patients do when they're looking for a dentist. You're looking for a dentist who has experience as well and has gone there. It's not their first rodeo. And I've heard this similarly with when you buy artwork or you're buying someone who's doing a trade, and people value that person's, hourly time. Well, this is so expensive. You're actually not paying for that specific hour. You're paying for all the mistakes, all the learning, all the insight, and the ability of that person to take what they're doing and their craft, and you're paying for that expertise in that 1 hour time, for example. So I think those are words of wisdom for sure that people just need to hear again, that, hey, buy experience and consider the people's or the folks that you're going to work with, their background. That's some great advice.
Well, if you don't mind me interrupting again, because every time you give an answer, I think of something else. But for the dentist out there, every dentist knows this story. A competent dentist who's very experienced in particular procedures can complete something in, say, 20 minutes, when the suggested time allotment for that might be 40. And the fee is set, on time and responsibility and other factors, but some are just faster than others. That's the nature of this profession. So the patient gets up and says, $350, that only took 20 minutes. And the dentist says, well, have a seat. I can make it last another half an hour if you want.
Right.
And no one sits back down.
Right.
So I think that's true of lawyers, accountants, business brokers like me, competent dentists, whether it's $800 an hour or 10% commission, that's all just relative, ideally, to the intended result. And you can't measure the result until the process is complete.
Right.
So the 5% commission guy versus the 10, the common question we get is, can you sell my practice for more than him? I say, I don't know. If he doesn't get to sell it, how can I promise you that I could sell it for more, because you're only giving me a chance?
Exactly.
I wrote an article about that years ago. It's called Impossible Promises. So if anybody approaches you and says, I'll get you more money than the other guy, it's actually a misleading claim, because you can't prove that. You will never be able to validate or prove that. So you'll never hear that from anybody at my company. We'll get you more. How can I prove that out, Arvin?
Yeah, impossible.
The other guy never got a chance.
Totally.
Regardless of his commission rate, he never got a chance to sell it. So how can we measure A versus B? We can't. So just watch out for those I'll get you more money claims, because it's an impossible promise. It's misleading. And I think it's absurd that people in brokerage say that. They just say it to try to defend, to get the listing. It's like the realtor that says, I'll get you $1 million. When the other 3 realtors came in last week and said 850, 910, 870, and someone walks in and says $1 million, they're buying listings at that point. They're setting false expectations and they're buying listings.
Wow. Great advice. And so then that's perfect segue to the next question, like common do's and don'ts during the process.
Well, one of the do's is, pick experience, of course. We've covered that. Preparation and in getting your business ready for sale, regardless of which broker you pick. So now we're beyond which broker you picked one. Doesn't matter. Maybe my firm, maybe another. That individual better have a process to get that practice ready. Now, again, I always use residential real estate because it resonates with all of us. I mean, getting a house ready for sale, well, we call it staging. Some people say fluffing, silly terms like that. Well, that matters. There's a reason that exists as a massive industry. Staging matters. And the common staging tips we get from the realtors are declutter all the personal, take down the pictures of the dog and the cat and the kids and the family, take out all that artwork that you collected on your great trip to some exotic part of the world, and you kind of sanitize the home into looking like Home and Garden magazine or Architectural Digest. And of course, the decluttering, the landscaping, the painting. We do this for a reason.
Yeah.
It attracts more buyers and allows them to see themselves in the house. So that's just called home staging. Well, the exact same thing happens with businesses coming for sale, but it's a little more systematic and it's a little more detail-oriented, and they have to get your data ready because we're not just selling the practice to the buyer dentist. We're selling that practice and its data pool to the accountant, the lawyer, and the banker. And they are extremely critical and skeptical people, now more than ever. So the quality of that appraisal that's being assembled for you by the appraiser that you've selected means more than ever. Appraisals used to be a little bit off the cuff. I call them napkin valuations. Doctor runs up to me at the reception at a dental convention somewhere in Canada and says, hey man, I grossed this. I got this many ops, this many square feet. I got a good lease. What's my practice worth? I whip out a napkin on the bar and do a quick calculation and hand it over.
Yeah.
That was actually, up until quite a while ago, you could get away with that because it was a very simple industry. There were some very, very simple prevailing rules of thumb. You didn't really need a very thorough appraiser, and you didn't need to hire the experts to validate value. Well, a couple of things happened. One, practices became much larger, much more expensive, more sophisticated in a multitude of ways. And the banks, accountants, and lawyers, and the dentist buyers themselves said, I've got a lot of questions. That's what that appraisal does, okay? It's preparing the business for sale as a presentation. And appraisals are not written to impress owners of practices, although I hope that ours do. It's not written for you, Dr. Owner. It's not written for me. We published over 10,000 of them. I don't write them for me. We custom write every single appraiser for the intended reader. And the intended reader is the buyer and their advisory circle. And some of these buyers have a very large advisory circle. 5 to 10 people will be consulted by a buyer with that appraisal in hand before they decide to proceed to make an offer on a practice. So if we know that there's that many people reviewing it, and lawyers have a different eye than an accountant, than a banker, than a consultant, than a father, than a dentist, than a classmate, you have to consider all of those intended readers when you publish that appraisal. So the number one thing, what to do, get a real good appraisal. Pick the one that is most respected by accountants, lawyers, and bankers. And if you don't know who that company is, call your accountant, call your lawyer, and call your banker. There's your integrity check and your reference check on the quality of the appraisal. From there, things to not do is don't make it difficult on the appraiser. We've arrived at practices where the doctor's like, I don't know how to print that report, and I don't know where my lease is. My lawyer's probably got it. And what do you need that for anyways? Like, I can tell they're not engaged in the process. They're not excited about documenting and validating the value of their business. They're disengaged in the process. They're dismissing our tedious line of questioning. And it is very boring and tedious to go through an appraisal. I'll warn you now. It just takes time, though. And some of our clients love it. But when we see that the owner is not engaged, not enthused about the business, they don't know their data, they don't know their reports, they don't know where some of their documents are, that will reflect very poorly on the value of your business, and it's not good for business. Cancel the appraisal right there, send that appraiser away, and get your shit together, doctor, okay? Because that impacts the appraiser's view of your business acumen, your business skills, the integrity of your business, and therefore the value of your business. And to not pay attention to that and to dismiss that very, very early opportunity to present your business in a positive light will detract from value substantially. So I would recommend you cancel it, send that appraiser away, and realize the severity of that very, very early preparation step. And when done properly, organic, latent, and hidden value can be found, and often worth substantially more than the cost of the appraisal will be documented. Long answer to a short question.
No, it's so great because what's coming up for me when you're sharing that so richly, Timothy, is that folks, a dentist that's ready to sell has to really be emotionally prepared, mentally prepared. And it goes to the answer to the previous question. It's like that preparation piece is so critical, and preparation both from getting documents together, T's crossed, I's dotted, but then also just getting your mind right. And maybe folks are not ready. And so I guess you've actually stopped appraisals when you saw that, and like you said, get your shit together and come back, and to make it worth everyone's time when the dentist is ready.
Well, we have. Like, some people do the appraisal as a curiosity seeker. We're all curious about the value. For example, if you own a home and you drive home one day and there's a sign on the lawn down the road, never existed before. You're like, wow, the Smiths are selling. I wonder what they're asking. So what we do there is we look up that property on the multiple listing service, or we call a realtor we know to try and find out the asking price, because we're trying to self-appraise our home at the exact same moment. That's exactly why we're doing it. Our curiosity about that house for sale down the street is highly motivated by our curiosity and our desire to self-appraise our own home. So we're self-appraising. If you have an investment, which a lot of us do, particularly as we get older, we have some retirement savings, an RRSP here in Canada, we're always looking up those values. We have charts and graphs. It's on our phones. Some of us still read traditional newspapers. We're looking at the value of things because we want to know. So self-assessing is what some of us do. So they engage a professional practice appraiser. I just want to know what it's worth.
Right.
And then we send all these forms and documents, and it's very tedious for some. And they're going, oh my goodness sakes, I didn't want to go through all this. $5,000, $10,000. Like, come on, you guys know, you're the experts. Just give me a number.
Right.
I don't want to pay for all that. And we're like, why are you doing this? Why do you even want to know? Do you want me to guess? Well, I'm a pretty good guesser, but I'm not that accurate sometimes because of the unique nature of dental practice. And, we have to really drill down into the practice to know a little more about its true latent and hidden value, which is not revealed on a financial statement that's filed with the tax department. So I think that some owners have just taken it casually, and they're like, realtors, they just drive by. They don't even come in. They go by the curb, and then I get an email a day or two later telling me what they think it's worth. They don't have to come in. They don't look at anything. Well, we do. And some owners just don't take this appraisal very serious. And I think it's a serious miscalculation.
Yeah, great. So then, now we've got the preparation. You've got a dentist that's mentally prepared, willing to do the work, engage, has the right attitude to take this on. What does the process look like at a high level, right? They've done their due diligence. Maybe they're talking to a few brokers, and they end up going with you, for example. What does the process look like? One, you have initial meet, and, are you signing a contract there? Are you guys doing an assessment? If you could kind of pinpoint the milestones of the process, that'd be great.
So we call it a critical path, and it's about 20 to 25 steps for each. And that's from the start to finish to money in your pocket. Okay, closing date. That's the day you get your check and you hand over your keys. So from first telephone call, hi, my name is, I'm thinking of selling, tell me about what you do, to that closing date, 3 to 9 months for most dental practices in Canada today. Sometimes faster. If it's urgent, we can triage a file and move it quicker. So it starts with engage the appraiser, whoever that may be, start with that. And it usually takes the appraiser a week or two to get a date, to get in. We always arrive when there's no staff or patients. So there's just a little logistics to getting in. During COVID, it was very easy. We got into all kinds of practices to do appraisals. Many of our clients are still ordering them to just be ready for whatever may come next. So there's just a little marketing right there for the appraisal community. You never know what's going to come next on. All right, so then it's the appraisal. That takes, in our company's instance, about a month. From the day we arrive to the day we publish the appraisal, it's about a month. And it's not that we're slow, we're just busy because we get a lot of orders for many other reasons. So 1 month to get the appraisal done, about a month to put the practice on the market. A listing agreement is signed. We call it an authorization agreement. It's very similar to listing a house for sale. And then we get started. We put some confidential ads on our website. We host confidential opens. Opens are similar to what realtors do, but generally by appointment only when we can access. During COVID, we didn't access. We did virtual opens by webinars. All buyers are pre-qualified, pre-screened. We want to know who their lawyer, their accountant, their banker are. They have to sign non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. It's just a lot of tedious processing to make sure that we are revealing the business only to those who are serious, qualified, and will respect the confidentiality of the owner's private information. One of the jokes in our industry is people would come up to us and say, sell my business, but don't tell anybody about it. I don't want anyone to know. And of course, that's impossible. So you have to trust that that broker is using discretion to pre-qualify and screen the buyers to make sure they're not just sending your appraisal to the doctor across the road. And unfortunately, that happens with automation and the ability to just email a file to anybody. Some brokers are a little lazy and they're not very competent at just slowing down and going, could you tell me more about yourself, Dr. Buyer? Who are you? Where are you from? Can you get the money? Now, these are some of the questions we have to ask. So I'll just recap there. About a month to get the appraisal, about a month to get going and get it to market, and about a month of negotiations. Offers usually come in 1 to 2 weeks of offers. Buyers get time to see their lawyer, accountant, banker. And then once we find that right buyer, there's usually 2 to 3 days of a little bit of final back and forth. We're fine-tuning an offer. The lawyer wants to make a change. Maybe we negotiate a little higher price for our client, which is our goal at all times. And usually we're successful, not always. Then the purchaser is now into the conditional sale period. So now we're into about month 3 or 4 at this point, and it's conditionally sold to one doctor at this point. Then they get 2 or 3 weeks just to validate due diligence, which is the final and thorough drill down into all the minutiae of the practice. We don't let every buyer do that. It's senseless and useless and not necessary. We only let the final buyer do that. Then they satisfy their bank, their accountant, their lawyer. They remove their conditions. And then typically that buyer has a resignation period. They're usually working someplace else, and they want to give 1 or 2 months notice. And they don't give that notice until they've removed their last condition, right? Because they don't want to quit their job until they know they're going forwards with the purchase. So now we're into month 4 or 5, and typically we close, say, in about 6 months, sometimes a little longer.
That's great.
I hope that gives kind of a, the big picture view of how long it takes and what it takes. In between that first phone call to the closing date when you get paid, probably 500 to 1,000 emails, texts, and phone calls between you and your broker, probably 200 to 300 emails, texts, and phone calls with your lawyer and your accountant. That's just for the owners I'm talking about. And probably 500 to 750 individual little minor steps and thoughts and processes and checks and balances. For the average broker, him or herself, we put in between probably 250 and 500 hours on one deal.
Wow.
If it's done right. Sometimes we get lucky, though. I mean, sometimes the buyer just presents, goes over the top, offers full price, no financing. That can happen. And it's shocking. That's a rarity, and I would not expect that.
Right.
But sometimes we get very lucky, and it's a smooth, beautiful, elegant process. We want them all to be that way, but at this time, transactions are substantially more complex than they used to be. People are very, very skeptical. The buy side is very nervous right now, as they should be.
Well, I think that goes back to a point you made earlier around experience. So someone that has seen it all, ultra smooth, easy, quote unquote, easy transactions versus everything going sideways throughout every stage of the process, and to be able to kind of react and adjust or even anticipate those things is definitely an advantage of having someone that could do that for you as the seller doctor. And so then the next question then, how do you, what goes into valuing a practice? Is it, asset-based valuation? I've got 3 chairs and this building, so I'm just valuing that asset, or is it kind of a discounted cash flow method where, hey, my practice is generating this, here's my book of business, here's the net present value of the discounted cash flows. Can you shed some light on how you guys go around valuing a practice?
Sure. So I'm going to try and be as simplistic as possible, because you just dropped a lot of terms that are used in business valuation about net present value of cash flow, discounted cash flows, projected earnings methodology, multiples of earnings. There's capitalization rates. There's a lot of different language around the valuation industry. I'm not going to use any of those complex words. It's really very simple. Our appraisal is a combination of 2 things. One, the tangible asset backing. That's your stuff, man. That's all the things you own. We count light switches. We count plugs. We do tedious work on just estimating or determining the fair market value of your leasehold improvements and your equipment, your tangible assets. There is tens of thousands of dollars of hidden and latent value inside every dental practice that earnings methods, for example, where they're just multiplying the profit, completely ignore. And the classic example is a 5 operatory practice that's 30 years of age, good condition, but literally not upgraded, versus the 5 operatory practice that was built 2 years ago. Needless to say, there's a substantial difference in the tangible asset package. And we haven't even looked at a financial statement yet. So you have to take that into account. And people that ignore that are just looking at profitability, unfortunately, are ignoring the investment the doctor has made. And these are the tools of the trade, and they're very important. So we do that first and foremost. Now we go to the goodwill or the calculation of the economic value of the practice. And sure, you can look at multiples of revenue, multiples of earnings, but there's so many individual variables that make a practice generating, say, $250,000 a year in earnings more valuable than a practice generating $350,000 in earnings. Because we have to look at the premise lease. How long is it for? What's the validation of it? Does the landlord have any specific rights to terminate? Relos and demos, which is relocation and demolition privileges, are everywhere in leases today. And landlords can be very, very uncooperative, although I think they're going to become more so because they're going to have more vacancies in the near future. But you have to look at that lease. It has a significant value over the entire business, much more than most people can even remotely value. Then we look at the present, the employment situation. So not only what are your employees, how long have they been here, what do you pay them, what do they do? We look at the employment agreements that they're on, if there are agreements. And if you do have proper written employment agreements, your business will be worth more than you will invest in them. So call a labor lawyer and invest in them now. If ever you were going to do it, doctor, do it now. Please take that advice away from this podcast. And a business that has those proper written agreements with associates, partners, specialists, denture therapists, hygienists, whoever works in that business in any way, shape, or form, proper written agreements are critical. So a practice grossing $1 million a year with a profit of, say, $250, measured up against an identical practice grossing $1 million a year with a profit of $250, I asked the listener, which one would you rather buy if I told you one has 10 staff on no agreements and the other has 10 staff all on proper written employment agreements? Which one do you want to buy? At first glance, economically, they look identical. The equipment could be identical. The leases could be identical.
Right.
I'm buying the one with all the proper written employment agreements. Thank you very much. And that's the one my lawyer, accountant, and banker want me to buy. That's a significant impact on value that has nothing to do with profitability. It has nothing to do with future expected earnings, nothing to do with EBITDA. Most people have heard of that thing because it's all about earnings and multiples and cash flows and future and historical. Ignore all that.
Right.
Yes, that stuff matters. That's business valuation 101. Anyone can Google it. Google how to appraise a dental practice. There's all kinds of stuff out there. You need to know that business and what's unique about that practice. There's your proper appraisal. There's your experience. That's what's going to reveal the latent and hidden value. And at time of appraisal, your appraiser will make note of these things and say, so no written agreements, no renewal in your lease. You've got some deficiencies here that are going to hurt value. That's when you stop and say, I could probably wait a year or two. Do you think it's time to make some changes that might enhance business value? And we say, yes, now we're thinking. We don't need your listing today, doctor. We need it when it's ready, and we need it when you're motivated. If you can wait a year or two and follow some of these advice that we can give you, yes, wait. And it's always possible to improve a business before sale. Always. Some of our clients don't want to make any change, and they're going to let the buyer ethically exploit those opportunities. And the practice will sell for less and the buyer will improve it and they'll get the value. But I would recommend to an owner, if you've got 1 to 2 years left, it's never too soon. Get the appraisal, uncover the deficiencies, make some changes, and then go to market.
That's great. I love how you sum that up. So especially the insight around the contracts around your, the team, your labor force around that's so great. So then what are some, key metrics that, you had a conversation with the dentist, they have the appetite and the motivation to uncover the deficiencies. They're not taking it personally. They're looking at it, hey, this can increase my value. What are some of the key performance indicators or key performance metrics that are you looking to improve? Is it, one would be this may not be a metric, but getting those contracts in place, like you said, it's never too soon. But would it be cleaning up the number of patients? Would it be, trying to improve the average billable per patient? Would there be any metrics that you would kind of highlight or underscore to improve the value of the practice?
That's kind of, we're almost crossing into the practice management arena. I've never met an owner who didn't realize that the business could be run more efficiently in one way or another. most owners readily admit that, yeah, I don't really pay attention to that, or I know I've heard that from my staff and a number of other people. I just don't want to do it. So I'm never going to give advice to a doctor that's going to go against their ethics. Sorry, I don't mean ethics. I mean just their motivation, their choice, their style, their individual philosophy. Just do what comes naturally to you. If you really want to improve the value of a business, work harder, make more money, lower your overhead, raise your profitability, clean the place up, systematically document all of your data, whether it's good or bad data, at least systematically document it, educate your staff, train your staff, motivate your staff, call your charts, follow up on treatment planning, manage your receivables, get rid of bad debts, call out some of the loser patients that just ruin your day and demotivate your entire team, paint your office, get a better lease. There's hundreds and hundreds of things you can do. I'm not going to go into that. There's just too many. Everybody knows there's deficiency in their businesses. I have some. I struggle with them. I just don't want to make the change. Maybe I'm a little too old, or maybe I'm a little too stubborn. I'm probably set in my way. Yeah, I know. I have all kinds of people fly in from the outside. They do what we call seagull management. They fly into ROI Corp. They fly around everybody. They shit on all of us, including me, and then they fly out. And they leave some tips, and I know, but I just don't want to do it.
Right.
At this stage of my career, I am probably a little stubborn and set in my way. I think a lot of owners, including myself, are actually holding the business back more than we're pushing it forward, especially as we age.
Wow, that takes some vulnerability and courage to say that. And so I think what you're pointing to is folks being really honest with themselves and understanding, hey, what do you have the capacity for? If you do have a deficiency, being honest, I am not going to take care of this deficiency, and be eyes wide open on how it will impact the valuation of your business and whether you want to take action or not. And you basically answered my next question, would be, how can I raise the value of my practice? And you listed off a whole bunch. So, having said that, you recently posted something on LinkedIn around non-ground level practices and the valuation. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the podcast notes here. But I thought that was really interesting. Do you want to, in a quick soundbite, kind of summarize your perspective on those kind of ground level versus non-ground level practices and how it can impact valuation?
Yeah, people don't want to go up elevators anymore. So get down to ground, call your landlord, and make a deal to break your lease. Suck it up. Your business will be worth more in the future if you get down to ground. It's a major expense. It's a major hassle. It'll be worth it. Get down to ground.
Awesome. And then I think the last question I got here, your perspective, you've done 10,000 plus different cases and dealing with dentists. COVID-19, today is June 4th. Things are starting to open up. Dentists we've talked to in Texas, North Carolina, things are opening up. Ontario here, they're opening up. COVID-19 impact on dentists. Any thoughts on that? On how it could impact valuations, or any advice, or just from your perspective, being in the industry and having that experience, any thoughts on COVID-19 and the industry?
Sure. Your business will recover. We call it the revenue recovery rate. We don't know what it's going to look like. So the RRR, revenue recovery rate, can only be measured once you're open and running again. And your first 30 days is not a good measurement compared to your last best month. Don't do that. Get open, get busy. You'll probably be working slower. You'll probably perform slightly less complex procedures due to some of the protocols. Your staff may be a little nervous. Some staff may be the same. Get open, get working, and just wait. Get your revenue recovery rate going. And sure, your overhead's going to be a little higher, but there are chances to lower overhead right now. I'm not going to go into that today, but wages are a huge opportunity right now for owners, reluctant as it may be to talk about. You can get your overhead under control. So plan on slightly lower revenue, slightly higher overheads, and a revenue recovery rate that can only be measured after, say, 90 days, 6 months, a year, whatever it may be, and just get back to work and get into a new norm. And then if you really need to sell now, you can sell now. There are buyers out there, but I would wait if you could. A year would be logical for most. We'll do a new appraisal then. But COVID is like having a flood. Many dental practices have flooded. They're closed for 90 days. They reopen and everything's fine. Just think like that for a minute. You had a flood, doctor. Get open, get back to work. Yes, it might be a little slower. And yeah, there's some extra protocols and takes a little longer to see a patient. But the good news is your waiting room won't be filled with people using up your receptionist time. Just can't sit there. So the social gossip and all that stuff that grinds a practice to a halt for certain times during the day is gone. So you can become more efficient because you're less cluttered. You have less humans in the space. So use it to be productive. Get back to work. That's all I got to say. You just got to get back to work, folks.
Yeah. The dentists we're talking to, they're super anxious to get back to work. And that's I think everyone's thinking the same thing and appreciate that. You know what, Timothy, great conversation today. We're super grateful to have you on the show. Where can folks reach you online? We're going to post your LinkedIn profile. I think that you post some interesting content that's worthwhile. But where can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to start because there you'll find a lot of my content. You can go visit my profile, look at a lot of videos, podcast videos, books. There's offers there to get a free book. I can be reached through there. LinkedIn really is my mothership of connectivity right now for me. It's where I feel most comfortable. You can text me through that. You can email me through that. You'll find me. The LinkedIn profile is the place to go. There's free copies of my book there for dentists. I've also published a book for optometrists and veterinarians, if you know any. And to start with that, get a free copy of the book, do your research, get somebody to do an appraisal of your practice doctor. It's a little naive and selfish to think you're going to live forever and nothing's ever going to go wrong. Look what just happened, okay? So get an appraisal, and an appraisal of a professional practice is now like your will. If you don't have a will, shame on you. If you don't have an appraisal on your business in the vault, just in case, shame on you. It's no longer elective. It's now mandatory. Grow up. The world is changing. You're a professional with a very, very valuable asset. Don't leave your family without a will. Don't leave your practice undocumented. It's an individual in itself that deserves to be respected. You built it. Respect your practice like an asset, not like a toy and not just a job.
Great advice. Awesome. Timothy A. Brown, FRI, CEO and broker of record at ROI Corporation. We'll have his contact details, LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thanks everyone to listening. And again, thanks Timothy for being a guest on the show today.
Thanks for having me here.